Hello, everybody. This is Saturday, April 25th, 2020. And, well, I've been meaning to make a follow up video to the coronavirus in the US, but then because I had some pushback and some people were telling me that I shouldn't have made a video like that in the first place because supposedly it's not my type of video, but I really wanted to share some things that were on my mind, and some new things came up very recently, in fact, in the news that I really couldn't just keep it in any longer, and I needed to share it with you guys. So I put some of these new elements together, and I just wanted to put it out there so that it's not bottled up anymore. So this is what's happening now.
So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. Now, disinfectant for doing this, maybe on the hands, would work. And I was asking the question of the gentleman who was there yesterday, Bill, because when they say that something will last 3 or 4 hours or 6 hours, but if the sun is out or if they use disinfectant, it goes away in less than a minute. Did you hear about this yesterday? But I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better. That was done in the form of a sarcastic question to the reporters. Now, interior-wise, it's said sarcastically. It was put in the form of a question to a group of extraordinarily hostile people, namely the fake news media.
Incredibly mixed messaging from the Trump administration. The tension at the briefing was obvious and painful to watch as the president tried to downplay the concerns of a second wave of the coronavirus in the fall. President Trump made several claims during yesterday's press briefing that were immediately refuted by doctors around him. He tried to coax them several times into saying the virus may not return. In another instant, the president claimed the Washington Post misquoted the CDC director. This was at the beginning. He forced the CDC director to get up on stage to the podium and refute himself, even though he couldn't. It was incredible, and you have to think about the screaming and the arguing that must have happened during the day leading up to that moment, with the president ordering the head of the CDC to try and change what he said to the Washington Post, even though he believes what he said to the Washington Post was true.
To give bad medical advice, and this is how it played out. Watch this.
Dr. Robert Redfield was totally misquoted in the media on a statement about the fall season and the virus. Totally misquoted.
You were accurately quoted, correct?
I'm accurately quoted in the Washington Post.
What Dr. Redfield clearly was asking for, just like we asked for every American to follow the guidelines, he's saying, please add to that guidelines getting your flu shot and making sure you're protected.
There's a good chance that COVID will not come back.
We don't know.
And if it comes back, it's in a very small confined area that we put out.
Well, the great thing is we'll be able to find it earlier this time.
It might not come back at all, Jeff. It may not come back at all. He's talking about a worst-case scenario where you have a big flu and you have some corona. But it's all possible. It's also possible it doesn't come back at all.
We will have coronavirus in the fall. I am convinced of that. There will be coronavirus in the fall.
And by the way, Dr. Fauci has been saying this not just in secret to the president, out loud in public and interviews for months, that this is going to come back. And what you had yesterday was the director of the CDC quoted accurately in the Washington Post saying the winter's going to be bad too. We're going to have the combination of coronavirus and the flu. President puts out a tweet yesterday morning, says that the CDC director was terribly misquoted by CNN, he said. It was actually the Washington Post. Dr. Redfield did put out a statement yesterday at the hearing with at the briefing with him, the president standing at his side, saying, I was quoted accurately by the Washington Post.
Things could be much more worse this fall, and the president simply didn't want to hear it. According to our reporting, he was in a seethed all day yesterday after the report, because it flies in the face of this relentlessly rosy picture he's trying to paint. It's irresponsible and could be giving Americans a false sense of security that they could resume their normal lives this fall and not get sick when the virus could be back and back with a vengeance.
We got a series of polls that are now confirming exactly what we all were saying last week, and that is that the president's press conferences are hurting him. The president darting around left and right, hurting him. You know, the president on April the 13th saying, I have total authority. Then on April 15th saying, no, never mind, you guys have the total authority. Then on April 17th going, liberate, open up your states. Then yesterday on April the 22nd saying, wait, no, don't open your states. Actually, Georgia, you're doing it the wrong way. It freaks the governors out. It freaks the markets out. It freaks CEOs out. And, Mika, let's go through these polls. It's freaking the voters out. They've stopped listening, Donald.
To see a leader refuting himself in real time about whether or not it's going to come back in the fall, about whether or not this thing is real or if it's going to go away. It's unbelievable. For people who need information and are desperate on the way forward, they're getting nothing.
As you know, and as I've said many times, we're very advanced in testing. Other countries are calling us to find out what are we doing. We've done more testing than every other nation combined. And that's a big statement.
See, Fauci, that we're just not there yet.
No, I don't agree with him on that. No, I think we're doing a great job on testing. I don't agree. If he said that, I don't agree with him.
We absolutely need to significantly ramp up not only the number of tests, but the capacity to actually perform them. I am not overly confident right now at all that we have what it takes to do that. We're getting better and better at it as the weeks go by, but we are not in a situation where we say we're exactly where we want to be with regard to testing.
What about concerns for safety and spreading this virus and potentially killing more people?
I think it's all hype.
We're against these big corporates that are trying to rack in all these dollars, who created the disease and now want to make people pay for the cure.
The flu kills more people than this does.
Unethical, disgusting. You're a virus.
We're trying to do the right thing, and we don't need to get attacked. It's not fair to get attacked.
Fake nurses, actors.
And a handful of nurses wearing masks, refusing to move.
Pictures of nurses and physicians with bruises on their faces and crying because they can't take another day of losing patients. It's just incredible that that doesn't seem to affect people.
People die from all kinds of things every day. That's just the way of life. The people that are getting sick are the people that are already compromised in the first place. They're usually older, they're unhealthy. I'm sorry for them.
Unless we get the virus under control, the real recovery economically is not going to happen. So what you do if you jump the gun and go into a situation where you have a big spike, you're going to set yourself back. So as painful as it is to go by the careful guidelines of gradually phasing into a reopening, it's going to backfire. That's the problem.
All you're going to do is start trouble, and everybody's going to end up going to jail. They won't just take you to jail and her to jail. They'll take everybody to jail, and it'll be on your record for the rest of your life. Is it worth it?
We have a right to be here too.
The president's policy says you can't start to reopen under his plan until you have declining numbers for 14 days, which those states and my state do not have. So then to encourage people to go protest the plan that you just made recommendations on Thursday, it just doesn't make any sense.
Much of this feels like a Donald Trump re-election rally at the same time. Many people coming out to support the president, many not wearing masks. Some are, but a lot of the people in this crowd right now are not wearing masks and don't have a particular concern about the coronavirus.
We are here exercising our God-given American rights, our Second Amendment, and we're here in support of firing DeWan, getting rid of him. He hasn't done anything for this state other than cause economic grief.
Everybody around the world is sacrificing, really taking on a lot of hardship to be able to flatten this curve and to reduce this slow spread. And it's kind of like deciding after you jump out of an airplane and you've pulled your parachute, if now that you've started to slow down, that you say, hey, I don't need this parachute anymore, and just cut the cord.
We are essential! We are essential! We are essential!
Driving out of this Ohio parking lot is a woman who just attended a church service with dozens of other people, including children.
Can I ask you about your decision to go to church, to be inside that building?
I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Aren't you concerned you could infect other people if you get sick inside?
No.
People who don't go to this church?
No. I'm covered in Jesus' blood. I'm covered in Jesus'
But what
blood.
about other people who don't go to this church who you might encounter?
All of these people go to this church.
No, but you're going to be in places where other people
I go to the grocery store every day. I'm in Walmart,
What?
Home Depot, all of those
But you
people.
could get them sick from what happens in
They
the
could
church.
get me sick, but they're not because I'm covered in his blood. Thank you very much.
Church leaders would not talk to us on camera, but have posted this statement which implicitly refers to the pandemic and adds, for that reason, we believe that the doors of Solid Rock Church should remain open.
The church says it practices social distancing inside, but the pastors would not allow us in, so we have no way of confirming that. Either way, it doesn't address the potential dangers of large gatherings. What if one person is infected? You're all in that building together. It's a large gathering.
Absolutely not concerned. The blood of Jesus cures every disease. Psalms 91, read it.
Miss, you could get somebody else sick if you get sick inside.
Well,
there.
what if you got it? You could get me sick.
What if you get others sick, though, who don't go to this church?
There's not one person sick.
How do you know?
Because I know I'm the pastor.
But how do you know?
Because I would hear about it if somebody was sick.
Well, you could be asymptomatic.
You better not print no fake news about me, or you'll hear from me.
What we heard were a lot of people who made up their minds. This man, though, sounded a bit different.
I see both sides of the story.
You do see both sides, though.
Oh, yeah. I see both sides.
Well, why not just pray on the internet, pray with your family right now to keep people a little safe?
It's called values and liberty.
You have the choice as an American.
But if you're infected, sir, and you go into the grocery store and you run into someone and get them infected, that's
Why
not fair to them,
why
is it?
not flip it the other way?
That could happen too.
You
But
know?
you're increasing your chance of getting them sick, right?
Could be. Look, I would hear about it if somebody was sick.
Well, you could be asymptomatic, sir.
You better not print no fake news about me, or you'll hear from me.
COVID-19.
COVID-19.
I blow the wind of God.
The wind of God.
On you.
On you.
You are destroyed forever,
You are destroyed forever.
and you will never be back.
And you'll never be back.
There's also an ecosystem of conspiracy theories, like the false belief that the virus was caused by 5G networks, something that led people to set fire to cell towers in the UK this month, which is just ridiculous. Talk radio, where the most powerful host is undeniably Rush Limbaugh, a man with millions of listeners and a Presidential Medal of Freedom. Even well into the outbreak, Limbaugh has been spouting some fabulously wrong information. Here he is on March 11th.
This coronavirus, all of this panic is just not warranted. I'm telling you, when I've told you that this virus is the common cold, when I said that, it was based on the number of cases. It's also based on the kind of virus this is. Why do you think this is COVID-19? This is the 19th coronavirus. They're not uncommon.
And I know it is easy to write off Limbaugh as a right-wing blowhard, but the reality is he draws over 15 million listeners a week, among the most loyal of whom is the president, who reportedly considers Limbaugh a real-time metric of how his decisions are playing with his supporters. It's Limbaugh has spent years pushing his four corners of deceit, which consist of government, academia, science, and the media, which unfortunately happen to be the four most important groups to listen to during a public health crisis. And I understand why he'd sow that doubt. If you establish your show as the sole outlet worth trusting, that gives you a lot of power. And he's not alone in utilising that technique. Fox News' recurrent pitch to its audience has been that it will tell you the true story that elites and the mainstream media are trying to hide. And that's how some of their hosts played this virus initially, as a hysterical attack by the media to derail the president, with segments titled Coronavirus Hysteria, Liberal Media Hoax Backfires, and Trump Confronts the Panic Pushers. And when people started dying, and that argument became harder to sell, the network seemed to pivot from trying to downplay the warnings to downplaying the deaths.
To date, thankfully, 0 people in the United States of America have died from the coronavirus. 0.
We have 6 deaths from the coronavirus, 18,000 deaths from the flu.
9 people have died. That's tragic, but it's teeny.
22 people have been killed. Those numbers pale in comparison to the number of flu cases over this flu season.
An estimated 60,000 Americans will die from the coronavirus. According to the CDC, in 2018, 61,000 Americans died of the annual flu.
The fact of the matter is, we have people dying. 45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents, 480,000 from cigarettes, 360,000 a year from swimming pools, but we don't shut the country down for that.
A lot of people underestimated the danger of this virus early on, but Fox was still doing it, not just as the death toll mounted, but even as, behind the scenes, their own company was suspending non-essential business travel and encouraging employees to cancel all in-person meetings and summits and conduct business via Skype or by phone. Because, and this is true, they only pretend to believe these things on television for money. And the problem is, our current president isn't just the subject of this misinformation. He is, as we all know, also the target of it, often pulling his talking points directly from what he sees. Late last month, a popular conservative narrative became that it was time to reopen the economy, and Fox's Steve Hilton encapsulated it like this.
You know that famous phrase, the cure is worse than the disease? That is exactly the territory we are hurtling towards.
Now, I'm pretty sure Trump saw that, because just a couple of hours after that segment aired, he tweeted, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself." And the next day, couldn't seem to stop saying it.
We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem. That's why I talk about the cure being worse than the problem. We can't have the cure be worse than the problem. When I say the cure, and the cure could be worse than the problem itself, right? That's what we can't let that happen.
Even though Trump has access to the country's top experts, he's still getting advice from watching TV, and not just on talking points, but on medicine. Take hydroxychloroquine. It's a drug commonly used for conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and it got a huge boost in mid-March as a potential coronavirus treatment from Tucker Carlson's show.
Early evidence suggests that chloroquine, that's a cheap anti-malaria drug, may be effective in treating coronavirus. Gregory Regano is an advisor of the Stanford University School of Medicine, and he joins us tonight.
A well-controlled, peer-reviewed study carried out by the most eminent infectious disease specialist in the world, Didier Raoult, MD, PhD, out of the south of France, in which he enrolled 40 patients. Again, a well-controlled, peer-reviewed study that showed a 100% cure rate against coronavirus.
So I obviously, I only know what you're telling me, but I do know it's very unusual for a study of anything to produce results of 100%. I mean, that's remarkable, isn't it, or am I missing something?
Oh, you're very much missing something, Tucker. For starters, that man's role as an advisor to Stanford University was news to Stanford, who've since clarified Gregory Regano is not an advisor with their School of Medicine, and no one at Stanford was involved in the study. As for that 100% cure rate, you should know they obtained that by omitting 3 patients who were transferred to an ICU and 1 patient who died. And it is very easy to have a 100% success rate if you just leave out any result that wasn't a success. Nevertheless, the very next day, Trump publicly mentioned hydroxychloroquine for the first time and has since brought it up constantly with varying degrees of recklessness.
I just hope that hydroxychloroquine wins. What do you have to lose? I'll say it again. What do you have to lose? Take it. I really think they should take it.
A major setback in the hopes that the drug hydroxychloroquine could be used as a possible treatment for coronavirus. A clinical study indicates the drug touted by President Trump does not work and, in fact, may have a high death risk. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's chief medical correspondent, joins us. So what more about this study?
Well, this is one of the largest studies now that we've seen on hydroxychloroquine. This was done at the Veterans Administration Hospital, and what they found was that they sort of gave some of the patients hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, which is the antibiotic, and they compared them to patients who were not getting these medications. Now, they didn't see any decrease in the likelihood of the need for a ventilator or anything like that, but what they did see, and I think we have a graphic to show this, but 22% death rate among those who got the medication, the hydroxychloroquine and the azithromycin, and then 11.4% death rate for those who did not get the medications. So it was actually higher, Anderson, almost twice as high for the people who got the medications, the death rate. Now again, these are small studies. It's harder to read into it when they're smaller studies, but we've seen similar data now out of Brazil, out of France, and out of Sweden, where in Sweden they actually they gave guidance to the entire country's hospitals to stop using this medication. Hopefully we're going to get larger trial data, which has been going on in New York for some time, where you are. That data needs to be analyzed. But so far, the drumbeat around this has not been very positive, Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, it's disturbing that not only was it apparently not effective, that more people died who were getting it than those who were not getting it.
The study out of France, they did show at higher doses, this medication did have some toxicity on the heart. It actually was causing these heart arrhythmias. We don't know exactly what was happening here. But, you know, the first question you always want to know, is it safe? That's not clear yet. Is it effective? I think it's becoming increasingly clear that it may not be effective, certainly no more effective than not giving the medication. But
yeah, I mean, the president, one of the things that, would say is, what have you got to lose? Well, clearly, in this case, again, if this study holds up, there's a lot to lose.
What you have to lose? Take it? In terms of what you have to lose, possibly quite a bit. As doctors are warning, the drug can trigger arrhythmia, which can lead to a fatal heart attack in certain patients. And that is not to say that this drug shouldn't be studied. It should, and it is. But the feedback loop between Fox and Trump has run way ahead of the science here. In just one 2-week period, Fox personalities and their guests made claims promoting hydroxychloroquine nearly 300 times, with Laura Ingraham even visiting Trump at the White House earlier this month to advocate for the drug. Thanks to this media frenzy, the efficacy of this drug, which should be a scientific issue, has become a political one. And all this time, existing patients with conditions like lupus who have been taking hydroxychloroquine for years are now struggling to get it. One large healthcare provider even wrote to lupus patients telling them that due to a worldwide shortage, it won't refill their prescriptions, saying, "Thank you for the sacrifice you will be making."
If it's my choice and I have to wear gloves, a mask, okay, I'll wear it. I'd rather go and wear it. If everyone else is wearing it, we can suck it up for a couple of months until things have passed. Probably can't eat popcorn because you have to keep your mask off the whole time, but you probably could eat a hot dog. You open up your respirator, take a bite, and you chew it under your mask. I have to drink my beer if I'm at a game. So if I have to use a straw and slip it in, I'll do that. I would rather have my temperature taken, drink beer from a straw, eat a hot dog by going like this and chewing it in a mask and not go at all. That's my decision. You make yours.
And while that's almost incomprehensibly stupid, you can't deny it's good TV. The issue is that the skills required to produce TV and to govern are very different. And unfortunately, we have a president who doesn't seem to know the difference. At the start of his presidency, he famously told top aides to think of each presidential day like an episode of a television show in which he vanquishes rivals. So we have a network and a president who thrive on division, feeding on one another at a time when we desperately need a unified response to a public health crisis. And all that brings us back to the protests that we discussed earlier. Hundreds of people have taken to the streets this week, fueled by the kind of misinformation that is rampant in right-wing media. The same right-wing media which then eagerly covered the protests that they helped create, like this.
Protests popping up all across America as some fed-up folks are demanding an end to stay-at-home orders.
They got in front of the governor's residence in St. Paul yesterday. They referenced things like President Trump's statement that the cure cannot be worse than the disease.
Except the cure can't be worse than the disease isn't Trump's statement. He stole that phrase from you guys. You shouldn't be crediting him with that. You should be charging him with copyright infringement. And like clockwork, Trump, just a few minutes after that segment highlighted groups like Liberate Minnesota, tweeted out, "Liberate Minnesota," followed by "Liberate Michigan," and then "Liberate Virginia." And all of this is legitimately dangerous. Because watching coverage like that might convince Trump that there's a sizable portion of the population that wants to go back to work no matter the cost. But that's not currently the case. 66% of Americans say they are more concerned restrictions will be lifted too quickly than too slowly. And it's frankly remarkable that number is so high after weeks of this bullshit. And look, I get Trump, Fox, and those protesters wanting all of this to be over. I do too. I want people to be able to get back to work and to get some sense of normalcy restored. The fact is, the fastest way for this to be over is for all of us to remain united in this very difficult task. But the only way that happens is if we have trusted, well-informed leadership, which unfortunately we don't. Instead, we have a compulsive liar constantly listening to voices telling him that this is nothing more than the common cold with potentially a 100% cure available, and that there's already a great plan to restart baseball, even as there's a swimming pool killing spree that for some reason nobody's talking about.
Well, I've done quite a bit of research in order to come up with all of this information. I went to different news sources and I double checked to make sure that everything checks out. And this is no bullshit. This is not fake news. This is not corporate media trying to start a revolution or anything like that. This is pretty much how it is. And this is the real world. This is the truth. So take it or leave it. But it's better to be aware of what's happening. To some people, ignorance is bliss, because I understand that people have their own problems to deal with. But at the same time, these are everyone's problems. And even whether or not you live in the United States or not, still the amount of influence that the United States has on the rest of the world and how everybody in the world deals with the situation of the coronavirus, as well as other matters, it really does affect everybody. So I hope that you did enjoy this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, now would be a great time to do so. Also leave me comments in the comments section to let me know how you felt about all this, what your thoughts are, how you're dealing with the virus situation, how the pandemic is affecting your area, and if you have any thoughts about going forward. So thank you for watching once again, and I'll get back to you with future videos from the Time-Lapse Traveler.